Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing what I thought was going to be a marble swirl, but I think this is a good opportunity to show you how to do like in an oil-based mica swirl in the batter. So I'm remaking my Johnny Utah soap that I've done in the past. It's going to be a little bit different of a technique, but I think that the color scheme is about the same, and I'll show you here in this picture. But I've got the Key West Blue Mica, the Twilight Mica, an Interstellar, and a Ultra Pearly White Mica, which is from Brambleberry, which I don't typically shop at Brambleberry, and this is an older mica, but I've had it around for a while. But anyway, I'm just mixing these like I normally do in my MCT oil, which is a liquid version of coconut oil. I've got my solid oils that I just melted. The temperature is about 114, and then I mix in my liquid oils to bring that temperature back down to around 90-ish, between 90 and, yeah, so that one's 89. And then the fragrance I'm using is Caribbean Coconut, which I have talked about in previous videos, and it's one of my staple scents. I love it. Interestingly enough, the way this kind of came out after it was all said and done, it had like a minty scent to it, but then again, my sinuses haven't been perfect, so maybe that's just me. But okay, I added my lye water and just blended a little bit. I wanted this to be pretty liquidy. And I know that the Caribbean Coconut fragrance does tend to let the batter move a little faster, so I wasn't really worried about this not completely emulsing. So anyway, I just hand stirred, and I split this into two because I'm putting my white mica in a portion of it and leaving the other portion uncolored. Now, Caribbean Coconut does tend to discolor the soap just a little bit. It's barely noticeable unless you know that it discolors. But I feel like by creating a portion of the batter as being white and then leaving a part uncolored, it's going to give a little bit more of that visual interest. So you're basically getting two colors with, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say. But anyway, so I'm doing this similar to the In the Pot swirl, which I have already posted. So I just dumped my white into the uncolored portion and raised and lowered the pitcher to give it like height dimensions, and then gave it a little spin. And I started kind of pouring a little bit at the bottom, because usually what happens with this mica oil swirl is your oil might collect at the bottom and create just a real, messy time. So I poured a little bit at the bottom first. I am putting a little bit of the oil at the bottom as well, but it ends up being just fine. So all I am doing is squirting random ribbons of this mica oil into my batter, and it's kind of creating that similar effect if you were doing In the Pot swirl with batter, except you're just using the mica oil. So what it does is it creates this interesting, again, ribboning effect in your batter. So yeah, it's really interesting. And I didn't do anything fancy with this. I just poured it in there. When it got to a point where I was seeing a mostly white batter, I went back in and sprinkled in some more of the colors, and then continued on with the pouring in there, and to give it a little bit more uniform appearance. And the way I cut this is different as well. I'm cutting this the way I would cut my wood grain soap, which I will link for you as well, so you know what I'm talking about. And so instead of straight cutting up and down, I cut chunks and then turn it to its side and cut that way, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I kind of zhuzh up the top a little bit, and then I put this in my crock pot because this particular mold fits perfectly in my old crock pot that I don't use for food, just so you know. But I keep it on low, or actually not even low. I keep it on warm and let it sit there while I finish cleaning up, and then I turn it off and let it sit overnight. So that's what I'm going to do here, is put it in my crock pot, and here it is the next day. And it's perfectly solid. It comes out of the mold just so very nicely. I prefer to wear gloves when I'm handling my mica swirls because of the fact that I can actually pull some of that with the oils in my hands. So anyway, what I'm doing here is my loaf is 8 inches across. So I'm accounting for 1/4 inch on either side to cut off as samples. And then I'm going to cut 2.5 inches across because that's how wide I want my bars to be. So here I'm still measuring the 1/4 inch, and then so I'm going to go from 2.5 to 5, and then that leaves me 7.5 inches because the 2/4 inches will take that 1/2 inch off the total loaf length to make the 7.5 inches, and it's a perfect divide of 3. So ultimately, with a batch like this, cutting it this way is going to yield 6 bars instead of 8. But they're a little bit fatter, so they're not 1 inch thick. They're a little bit over 1 inch thick. So you're getting a heftier bar this way, but there's fewer in this batch. So anyway, if I were to cut these the normal way, you can see for these from these 1/4 inch sections that it doesn't look very good. It's just kind of messy and I don't know, not really, there's nothing cohesive about it. But you'll see here in just a minute the way I cut this from the side angle that the pattern comes out a little bit better. So right now I'm just cutting that 2.5 inch width from the log, and give it just a minute here. Sometimes these soaps get really hard and it takes a minute to cut through them, but see, I have the front there and then I turn it to the side. And so you can see that it's a little bit, because each of those fingers is 1 inch and it's just a little bit wider. So I'm actually going to trim off the top just a little bit because it was a little uneven. But ultimately it's still a little over 1 inch per bar. So I cut off the bottom a little bit too. It's still a little over 1 inch per bar. You can see it kind of overlaps those fingers. But as you can see, there's a better pattern underneath it. This one's a lot more white, which is fine, but there's just a neater little pattern underneath that than if you were just to cut it straight across, like I had done with the 1/4 inch slabs. Front, turn to the side. So when I say front, I mean top. So like whatever you're left with at the end of your pouring, that's the top section. When you cut it like quote unquote wood grain, you're taking that top and you're turning it to the side. So anyway, I'm just gonna let this play and you can watch. All right, that's everything. After cleanup and everything, this is what they look like, and eventually those uncolored portions are going to turn a little bit tan, so it's going to look pretty cool after it's all said and done. Anyway, if you liked this video, please give me a follow. You can sign up for my newsletter at ariholdingauthor.com. That's through Substack, and I'd love to see you over there, and let me know what you think in the comments. And yeah, thanks for being here, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.